Because what they do is they say that all the initial entries here that they give you, what they do is they take $400 out of the first.
It was on, I could hear it.
Okay, if I can get all your attention, please. I know it's a little crowded here, a little bit loud. We're going to see what's going on with the PA. I got a degree in computer science. I can run a multi-million-dollar computer system, but I'll be damned if I can figure out them batteries in that. But we've had an unbelievable day so far. For all of those who have come to Faribault to hear, thank you. I mean, this is overwhelming support. As I mentioned from the onset, I figured if we could get 50 people, and I figured it'd be 50 of my closest friends together, it'd be an awesome day. And obviously we've overcome that goal immensely. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time with the trivial stuff, but I do want to thank all of you. The support we've had along the way has been miraculous. All of our volunteers, amazing. I mean, there's no way this could have happened without all the volunteer support, so thank you all very much. Before I get too far along, we had just recently received a notice from the Erickson family out of Waseca. They let us know that Amy Klobuchar, State U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, had sent a note, and it reads as, "Dear friends, thank you for the invitation to join today, the Operation 23-0 March. Although my schedule prevents me from joining you in person, I want to thank everyone here for bringing to light the devastating effects of veteran suicide. Our veterans have served us on the front lines, and we must now serve them with the support and resources that they need to return home. Too many returning veterans are suffering, and many tragically turn to suicide." Check. Check. Nothing. We might have to trade that for a lawnmower and then just chunk it. Too many returning veterans are suffering, and too many tragically turn to suicide in their darkest hours. We must do better. That's why Congressman Walz and I have continued to fight for the Clay-Hunt SAD Act, which will help expand access to mental health services for veterans by establishing a loan repayment program to help the VA recruit more psychiatric specialists, enhancing resources for our veterans transitioning to civilian life, and improving the VA's ability to address traumatic brain injury. While there is still more work to do, today's event is one more step forward in the effort to deliver veterans the suicide prevention and mental health care treatment they deserve. I am proud to represent you in the United States Senate, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Sincerely, Amy Klobuchar, United States Senate. It's important that we acknowledge all of our, not necessarily government officials, but just anyone that's going to support the cause. There's no way that we can do this alone. We need to have full 100% support from all entities. And it starts right here in this room with the American Legion, the membership, with the VFW, with our civilian populations, and certainly within our community of military veterans. No way we can get this done without everybody's collective effort. It doesn't matter what you think of the VA system, it doesn't matter what you think of the government, the administration, we cannot count on them alone. That is only one resource. We need to work together collectively and in unison to bring these issues to the forefront. We cannot stand by and watch our brothers and sisters commit suicide right before our very eyes. We need to take action, and it needs to happen now. They are on the very edge of life. They are living in critical dark hours, and there's no way that they can survive if we do not provide any amount of resources to them or let them know that they are surrounded by people that love them, and care for them, and will help them through their darkest hour. So we have to collectively take action. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our first guest speaker. I got to make sure I got your last name right. Matascastillo? That'll work. I think you would answer to anything at this point. Hector Matascastillo was in a razed state, armed with 2 unloaded pistols, facing what he thought was the armed enemy combatant. Check 1. Is that there? Seriously? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Took a woman.
I don't love you, but I like you.
Because they always have that.
Somebody else be push-ups. They were probably underneath you. Hector Matascastillo was in a Raz state, armed with 2 unloaded pistols, facing what he thought was an armed enemy combatant with a gun aimed at him. In his mind, the highly decorated former U.S. Army Ranger and Minnesota National Guard First Sergeant was on urban combat patrol in hostile territory. In reality, Matascastillo was undergoing a mental meltdown in his very front yard, a mental meltdown in the front yard of his split-level home in Lakeville, as the winter snowstorm bore down on the Twin Cities on January 24th of 2004. The enemy was, in fact, an off-duty cop, a combat veteran himself, who moments earlier was seated on a park bench nearby, contemplating suicidal thoughts. He was then interrupted by a 911 call, the dispatcher's call about a domestic disturbance involving another veteran. I didn't know he was a cop, Matascastillo said later. He was recalling the incident a short time later. He was to me the enemy, and he had the drop on me, but he was moving backwards, and that confused me. Hector is a St. Paul resident who grew up in the Chicago area, and he has one hell of a story to tell, and he's going to share some of that with us now today. Ladies and gentlemen, Hector Matascastillo.
Thanks for having me out. And is this thing still working? Because usually when you hand from one person to the other, it stops. That's how it goes. I remember solving a lot of the world's problems on foot marches. I was infantry, and that meant that you walked everywhere that you went. One of the longest marches that I did was 200-mile marches, but one that was marching alongside with the Marine Corps. I was in 1st Battalion, 75th Rangers. We were marching from Fort Ord to Camp Pendleton, or 29 Palms, my bad. And it was a 100-miler. There was a lot of talk between people. What was interesting, though, is that every mile that we went was another conversation. I mean, at times it was about how bad it sucked, and then somebody wasn't feeling a suck at that moment would tell you, yeah, you know, it could suck worse, and the stories that you told, the imaginations that were sparked. And as I was thinking about you marching out there and the conversations that you might be having, the memories that you might be sharing with each other or creating with each other, I started going back in my memory with all my military and everything that I've experienced, and I started remembering specific things that would make sense to talk about today. One of the most memorable things that I remember from the military career was a Colonel, Dennington Neil A. 1H, infantry, son. What branch are you? What MOS are you? He'd always ask you. He was the same guy that taught me that you don't wear aftershave or cologne ever if you're going to be infantry. Would make me wash it off, scrub it off by whatever means, because I needed to smell infantry. And infantry doesn't need to smell anything else than infantry. And they should bottle infantry so that people can undo what you've done yourself. Everything was infantry. And I remember that he introduced me to John Wayne. And a lot of people don't realize that he had this one CD that was extremely popular, and it was very patriotic. But on there was a specific poem, "Why Are You Marching, Son?" So I want to steal a question that John Wayne asked and apply it a little bit differently today, so as to bring a little bit of maybe thought-provoking insight into what we're getting ready to talk about. I'm going to ask you these questions, but don't answer out loud, obviously. Think to yourself. Why are you marching today? Why are you marching, sir? Why are you marching, ma'am? Sons, daughters, why are you marching today? Whose name is on the back of your rucksack? Whose name is in the back of your mind? Why are you marching today? I remember Colonel Dennington Neil A. 1H was the one who introduced me to not only John Wayne and the special ops community, but also PTSD and what it meant to be thinking thoughts of suicide. See, I was in a special detail with him, and I got to drive him for 6 months. So I was branched out from, or I was sent out from the Ranger Regiment to Special Operations Command, Special Forces, and got to just go anywhere with him. I always wondered, how is it that this colonel that isn't a commander, that isn't really doing anything, still in the military? And after driving with him for a while, I started realizing that it's because they have nowhere else to send him. They're not sure what to do with him. And so he was just kind of one of those special project officers that did whatever he wanted to do because he was legendary. He led SF teams into Vietnam and was one of those guys that was said to have gone, he was a lifer that had gone natural, was the way that he was described. But I remember, as if it were yesterday, being out there on one of those long roads in the backside of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. It's the one that I think splits into 24 and 10. One goes to Spring Lake Park, the other one goes out to Fayetteville somewhere. It was one of those kinds of roads where if you're out there, I mean, there's been stories of people that have died out there. There's emergency phones on these posts every once in a while, and you can't really figure out where they're at, and then the map is usually wrong anyway, because it's outdated. And the phone might not work when you get out there. And the temperature drops pretty significantly out there. The ranges are out there, all the drop zones, everything is out there. And Colonel Dennington wanted to go and visit some of the troops at one of the jumps. I remember we were heading out, and we hear the guns firing overhead. The 155s were firing, howitzers. And he asked me to stop the vehicle. I'm like, sure, sir. Pull off to the side of the road. We're on the shoulder. He's like, get out of the vehicle, Corporal Smith. So he couldn't say my last name either. I was a PFC at the time, so he promoted me and said that John Wayne would be able to say Smith, so therefore I'm now Corporal Smith. I was not going to argue with him. And we were out there, and it was quiet, except for the occasional screeching rip through the sky, that 155 round going overhead. And then we'd hear it pound, and he would shiver almost every time when he heard that round land. And I could see in his eyes that there was like a moisture, you know, like a little glistening, something forming under his eyes, and he didn't want to look at me, or maybe he just wasn't concerned that I was even there. And he looks at me, eyes are real moist, and looks off in the distance and says, Corporal Smith, you know what that sound is? Yes, sir, I got the range brief before coming out here. Those are 155s firing on such and such impact zone from such and such OP. No, Corporal Smith, you're wrong. I said, that's the sound of war. And every time I hear the explosion, I hear that explosion muffling out the sounds of the screams, and I wish the screaming would stop, Corporal. I want the screaming to stop. I had no idea what that meant, but as a young private first class, gratuitously promoted to corporal, name changed to Smith, I wasn't about to ask the colonel what that meant. But there was something in the back of my mind thinking, I hope it's not contagious, right? I mean, I'm thinking, this is bad juju. I can't tell anybody about this, because if I bring this back to my regiment, they're going to be like, man, shut up. Maddie, we don't need to be talking about that stuff. Whatever that is, it's bad juju. Forget that you ever experienced it. I remember about a year later after that, I was back in my regiment, my battalion, 1st Battalion, 75th in Savannah. We had left on this deployment, and it got pretty hairy. Well, there was this one ranger, we all looked up to him. And he's the guy that, you know, when he was wearing his dress uniform, had all the badges, tabs, and all the things hanging off, and, you know, it seemed like he had more stuff than generals do. And whenever people saw his uniform, they'd realize this guy's been there, done that. He already had a right side scroll, and whenever you had a right side scroll in the days when I came into the Ranger Regiment, it meant that you'd been somewhere, because most of the world didn't know that you were there already. And to get the right side scroll, something happened. But there was something really edgy about this guy, really, really ornery. He's not the kind of guy that you went downtown Savannah with, because he'd clear a bar. As soon as he walked in, it would be on. He didn't have to drink, but man, did you want to get trained by him. Because you knew whatever he did, whatever he taught you was going to keep you alive. He was mean. He was really mean. But on deployment, or when the crap hit the fan, that's the guy that you wanted there. We all wanted to be like him in some weird, odd way. But after this deployment, it's customary that they put us on like a 4-day pass or put us on block leave, and we'd all come back, and Rangers are pretty motivated. We're all excited to shave our heads and get that mohawk going, and then 5 o'clock a.m. the first Monday morning, we're all outside ready to go do PT with each other and tell stories. And we all wanted to talk about that last deployment that was really, really foobar, if you know what I mean. And that sergeant wasn't there. Now this is really odd because every Ranger comes back to the first formation. Every Ranger. Nobody thought about it, just that, yeah, he wasn't there. And nobody would say out of rank, you know, that's not the kind of stuff that happens in the Ranger Regiment. But he wasn't there, we were counting the days down to day 29. The Army, day 29, is that last day before you're considered AWOL. Day 30 came around and we're like, okay, something's not good. His wall locker was locked up, which meant something is not good. He's not coming back. And about 4 days later, we got the courage to ask Sergeant Robert A. Coco, who was my squad leader at the time, may he rest in peace, is there any way that we could go find out where he's at? Or, oh, no, we know exactly where he's at. You do? 4th floor, Wynn Army Community. It's over at Fort Stewart, Georgia, the hospital. Well, what's the 4th floor? It's a psych ward. What? Rangers don't break. This is ridiculous. Why would he be at the psych ward? So a few days later, we're like, yeah, you know, can we go visit him? Yeah. Why don't you guys go visit him? And there I was, all but 19 years old, and having a squad leader tell me, and while you're there, try to figure out what's going on inside his head. Roger that, Sergeant. Sounds like a good plan. All right. So we take off for the hour-long drive, and we're a little bit nervous because we don't belong in Fort Stewart, Georgia. We look different, we act different. We don't like the people at Fort Stewart, they don't like us. It's one of those things where we have to get really dressed up just to go, because it's part of the standard. And as we're walking up to the hospital, the nurse knew that we were coming. She meets us at the door. She's like, this is amazing, because you guys never come see your own. There's 2 problems with this. One is that she's insinuating that there's been more of us in there, which is a secret to me. The second one is that she's insinuating that we'd leave a fallen comrade to fall into the hands of the enemy. Both of which are wrong, but we weren't about to argue with her. I remember walking up into his room and looking across his room, and everything was really well lit. I mean, beautiful yellow walls and, you know, plants everywhere, flowers, cards. I mean, just the bed was better than anything we had in the barracks. And we're like, man, this is awesome, dude. How's it going? And he wouldn't look at us. Like this really dark spot, this cloud hanging over. He'd look out the window, and you could see that Georgia sunlight coming in, and a small breeze kind of pushing in a honeysuckle from outside. Just everything that's Georgia, that's beautiful, but he didn't seem to be present. Didn't even look up to see who we were. And after about half an hour of awkward questions and trying to break the ice, you know, hey man, so how are they feeding you? You know, those nurses are pretty, you know, and all that kind of stuff that 19-year-old Rangers talk about. I decided to just go ahead and ask the question. Hey brother, just kind of wonder, man, what's going on inside your head? And I remember he looked right at us with those snake eyes, just felt like he was ripping right through you, like he was looking into your soul. It was just scary. And he goes, you want to know what's going on inside my head? And I remember him saying, my head is a place where butterflies cry, and I can't stop their screaming. You want to go inside my head? I remember walking away, saying, hey man, we'll come back and visit you. The whole trip back was silence. Absolute quiet. We're not going to talk about this. I'm not going to tell my Ranger buddy that I'm scared to death of what I just saw in there. I'm scared to become that guy. And what brought him to the place where he needed to be hospitalized? And whatever it was, I don't want any part of it. And I remember Colonel Dennington knew late. And I remember thinking, no way, man. No way. Something's not right here. We got back. Sergeant Robert E. Coco asked us, so what did you guys find out? Bad juju, Sergeant. Can't go back there. Can't go back there. All right, well, let's not talk about it then. If it's bad juju, let's not talk about it. Not long after that, another deployment, another deployment, another deployment. Finally, it was my turn. And I remember not long after that thinking, I need to go instructor, I need to do anything for a couple years so that I can just take a break. I put in a drill instructor packet, I put in a ranger instructor packet, both were accepted. And as I was getting ready to start deploying within JSOC, I can't breathe. I can't do another one. I can't do this again. How do I get out of this? How do I get out of this? There was a loophole, and I ended up in National Guard. What's curious about that is that as I got off active duty, because I needed a break from deployments, I remember being in the National Guard and being that guy that just came off, you know, the just active duty and all the differences between myself and National Guard, and I would still work out every day. That's the only thing that I knew how to do. And I remember looking on TV one day as the towers went down. And while the rest of the world stood in shock, what do we do now? I remember I stopped doing sit-ups. And all I could think about was, I'm going to have to kill myself to make this stop. I can't do this again. They don't understand. That's all I could think. While the rest of the United States was thinking we're going to go to war, I was thinking, I'm going to die. I can't do this again. It's just too much. Too much. But being a good airborne ranger, the day that they were given classes on how to ask for help and how to surrender weapons, I was on leave. I wasn't there. In fact, I don't even know if there's a class on help or surrendering weapons. Never heard about it. But I did hear what it was like to just be quiet and suck it up. I started living every day wondering if there was anyone badass enough to take me out. I had joined a motorcycle club. I started rising through the ranks. And I rose through the ranks just by being cruel and mean, because I was surrounded by other cruel and mean people that were just as screwed up as I was, whose worlds were completely disorganized and psychically reorganized into everyone sucks except for us. Trust no one. The world is a crap hole. How come people don't get it? Everything was about trying to find that one person who was going to take me out today. Everything I did. I remember living every day with a thought in the back of my mind on whether or not I should just do it. Because if there's not going to be anyone badass enough, then maybe I'm the only one with the guts. I can tell you the difference between a revolver and a pistol dry firing in your mouth. I can tell you what it tastes like when you put blued steel in your mouth. The smells, the grips. I can tell you everything about that. I can tell you what it's like to not sleep for days. And not being in any manic phase, it's just you can't sleep because as soon as you close your eyes, something just comes up and slaps you awake and you realize that you're in a completely different world. Your planet doesn't make sense anymore. Your planet's trying to kill you. There would have been a time where standing in this corner wasn't going to happen. Way too many of you, I'm going to have to get out of here. And one of you might go with me. There would have been a time when I would have thought, good, perfect, now I'm leaving. I had rehearsed, I had plans, and like a good ranger, I had a primary plan, an alternate plan, a contingency plan, and an emergency plan. And I had rehearsed my primary multiple times. I even got to rehearse my contingency. I was that guy. I was that guy that you wanted on your side. You wanted to get trained by me. I had a reputation. Matty's hard. It's kind of crazy. But if you get trained by him, you're going to make it. I was pushing units out right after the towers went down in Minnesota, one after another after another. I deployed myself right after the towers went down, and I remember it wasn't a very good deployment. It was one of those kinds of deployments where as a staff sergeant, as a squad leader, I was just the edgiest, orneriest, meanest guy out there. And my guys really started hating me. I mean, I hated myself. I was depressed, but I wasn't showing it. I mean, I was showing it. Anger is a way to show depression. And I wasn't telling people that all I wanted was for this to end. I couldn't tell them because I was with a bunch of people I didn't think would understand. In fact, I remember it was one evening where one of the leaders, the platoon leader and the platoon sergeant, came up to me and said, "Here's the deal, Ranger Matt. You have to figure out your PTSD. You have to figure out your own PTSD issues. Actually, what they said, you have to un-F your own PTSD issues. Because there ain't no place in the Army for a depressed ranger. You get me? Roger that, sir." And I kept thinking, you know what? These legs, they don't have a freaking idea of what they're talking about. They don't know what it's like to hear your buddy screams in your head. They don't know what it's like to taste a piece of pork and put it in your mouth and realize that's the same flavor as your buddy's brain after it's been blown out. They have no idea what it's like to walk down a cereal aisle and then watch people's heads explode. You can't finish doing your grocery shopping because your brain's playing tricks on you. You think you're going crazy. They have no idea what it's like to feel like you're the monster. You're the reason why kids in other countries go to bed at a certain hour, because if they don't, then the boogeyman comes and get them, and I'm the boogeyman. They don't know what it's like to watch shadows in the corners just come up to you and kiss you, and I call them soul kisses, and remind you that you wasted them, you ghosted them. They don't know what it's like to close your eyes and just see it all happen over and over and over again. And I kept thinking, these guys are going to tell me what I need to do. But then, in that state of delusional thinking, remember, you know what? They're right. They have no idea what it means to be a natural-born serial killer and not want to be a serial killer. I am kind of depressed about that. There's a little bit of truth in what they said. And you know what? The only person that can un-F this situation is myself. All right. Makes sense. That's what I'll do then. That's what I'm going to do. So, I remember thinking, when I came back from that deployment, that I'm going to carry out the plan. I remember on January 24, 2004, I was on my deadliest mission ever. I was doing room clearing operations with one of my ranger buddies, and it's not uncommon to end up with just one other ranger. I mean, as a squad or the platoon or the unit starts clearing buildings, you keep moving quickly. But you don't go by yourself. There's always one other. We got done clearing his house, and he stacked on the door to let me know that he was ready, so I stacked behind him. And he went out the door, and I was right out behind him. Except that something very peculiar happened. I lost him. I lost him. I was completely confused, no situational awareness, and he was out. Which meant that I couldn't raise my weapons to the low ready, because what if I flag him as soon as I come up to the high ready at the first person I see? But what if it was the enemy that had a drop on me, and I didn't raise my weapons? And that's exactly what happened. The enemy had gotten a drop on me. To my 1 p.m. was an enemy combatant with a pistol, aiming his pistol right at me. I started yelling commands at him to posture because I figured I have the rest of my airborne ranger career to get out of this situation. Posturing didn't work. Multiple languages didn't work. And then he started to walk backwards. The rest of the story you kind of heard about. Turned out that I was facing off with not just one local police officer, but 8 of them. I was completely surrounded, and all I could see is him. The most applicable piece to it all is that as soon as I came out of my dissociative state and realized I wasn't facing off with an armed combatant, I realized that I was not going to be that hero that'd be buried with a flag over my casket after this. I was not the guy that was going to finish a career. I was not the guy that was going to be in uniform very much longer. I was the guy that was going to be in prison. I took an oath to protect my country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And now I became the domestic enemy. So I became suicidal. And I've talked to one of the cops that was there that night, the guy that actually came out first. Like, why didn't you shoot me? I don't know, man. I don't know. Each one of us could have. I don't know. Well, I have an idea that it's because there was a bigger purpose for all that. See, now, I march to a different beat. I realize that I have a new mission. I'm a therapist now working in an agency that gets it too. When I start to dip, I got a really, really great support system that says, you know what, you're dipping. We can tell that you're dipping. In fact, I got clients that tell me, I don't think that we need to be talking today. You're feeling kind of off. I have people that I can go to. And now when I hear the voices saying, just kill yourself, you're a murderer, there's another voice that's speaking into me that's saying you're loved, you belong, you're worthy. And I believe that voice. I know that I'm going to have things that are going to pop up from time to time. When I'm having one of those days where I want to isolate, and I can do it very easily because I'm an introvert and people just leave me alone. But when I really want to isolate, I do have people that come up to me and say, hey, Ranger buddy, it's just one step at a time. Take a knee and get back up. One phase at a time. I know I am marching, and I know that I don't march alone. It's been a little bit more than 25 miles since my march began. And I remember many times complaining or hearing others complain. I remember one story about a chaplain who was marching with us. We're busting gulches in the Cahucas, is what we called it when we were in 25th ID. Going up and down these ugly mountains. And one of these guys was complaining, and the chaplain comes up, he's like, hey, you better get right or you're going to get left. And I remember hearing things like that when I was going through my hump back from that night, and how hard it was sometimes, and I would hear people remind me that you can only lead as far as you've gone. And when you found your way through this thing, you got to go back and get others out. The march continues. I remember being told while I was in the throes of my crucible that you will be a better man because of this. Vietnam veteran, walk-in counseling center, looked straight at me and knows, just by looking at me, that I was thinking about it. And he said, "Hey brother, I know exactly where you're at. Thinking you're pulling a star straight out of the sky, realizing now you're pushing dirt back into your own grave. I know that place. Don't go into the grave." People telling me that once you're out of this hell, you have to go back and leave no one behind. No one. People reminding me about my creed, and that we don't leave our fallen comrades to fall into the hand of the enemy. We leave no one behind. I think I'd like to reissue a question with some potential answers, if you don't mind. What are you marching for? Are you marching for the 23 warriors that take their life every day under the weight of whatever it is that they're going through? Are you marching for the one that you lost to the enemy within that tells us that things are better off if we're dead? Are you marching because when you hear about another person taking their own life, it just drives you crazy? And you sit there and you start thinking, how can I have done to prevent it? How come the lights went out? How come I didn't know? Are you done hearing about how many people are taking their lives every day? Are you marching because you know there are people out there right now that are hearing the roar of guns inside their heads where their mind wages war? Are you marching because you don't know what else to do and just want to do something, anything, to punch a problem into something that really needs to be addressed, to punch the problem and do something more than just a donation, and do something more. I got to do something. There's got to be some action. Are you marching because you've been there before and want others to know what it was like for you to come out of that hell? And this is your way of going back to tell others and get others out of their own hell. Are you marching because your heart is broken and you're grieving and you're asking, why? Why did this have to happen? And maybe you're hoping that somehow, somewhere, someone will reach out to you and say something, anything, maybe just touch you on the shoulder. But anything, just break the silence. Maybe you're marching to break the silence. Are you marching because you're there right now and you're thinking that this is the last chance and if something doesn't change, I'm out of here? Will somebody notice? Is somebody willing to come get me? Whatever you're marching for, I want you to hear a few things that will help in the fight against suicide. Because it's around us. Just this morning I heard about another warrior that was buried last week because of suicide. I've had 3 clients commit suicide, one that was a veteran, and each time just pissed me off. Didn't know what to do. Like, how can we lose this? Why are we losing this? And I tell people, you can only lead as far as you've gone. And once you've found your way out of this hell, you have to go back. You have to. I tell people that whatever it is that you're going through, you will be a better person because of it. Whatever it is. No one knows if it's better on the other side or not, because no one's ever come back to tell us. So I'm not sure that this is worth it. Suicide's a permanent solution to a very temporary problem. And time provides more and more solutions with every single passing moment if you could just sit for a little bit. Have somebody that's willing to listen. 2 to 3 minutes will walk you back off the ledge, but you got to call someone. You got to do something. You have options more than you know, so asking someone else about options is better than the option that you're thinking about right now, which is a really bad option, given we have no idea what happens on the other side. Families and friends of those who commit suicide multiply the probability that they will commit suicide because of yours. So I tell people, if you want people to be miserable with you wherever you are after this life, why don't you just be miserable with them here right now? We can talk about it. Let's be miserable together. I'm okay with that. Let's just be here and work this out. Finally, I'm going to ask you to look at me and listen to these words. And please, if you can, believe. And if you can't believe, then you know that there's a red flag in your own life. But you are worthy. You do belong. And you are loved. And if it was hard for you to hear that, get help. Get help. I'm going to read a poem by John O'Donohue. I bet you never expected an airborne ranger to read you a poem. And it's called For One Who Is Exhausted by John O'Donohue. When the rhythm of the heart becomes hectic, time takes on the strain until it breaks. Then all the unattended stress falls in on the mind like an endless increasing weight. The light in the mind is light. You have been forced to enter time. The desire that drove you has relinquished. There is nothing else to do now but rest, and patiently learn to receive the self you have forsaken in the race of days. At first your thinking will darken, and sadness take over like listless weather. The flow of unwept tears will frighten you. Now you have traveled too fast over false ground. Your soul has come to take you back. Take refuge in your senses and open up to all the small miracles you rushed through. Become inclined to watch the way of rain when it falls slow and free. Imitate the habit of twilight, taking time to open the well of color that fostered the brightness of day. Draw alongside the silence of stone until its calmness can claim you. Be excessively gentle with yourself. Stay clear of those vexed in spirit. Learn to linger around someone of ease who feels they have all the time in the world. Gradually you will return to yourself, having learned a new respect for your heart and the joy that dwells far within slow time. Albert Schweitzer, theologian, Nobel Peace Prize winner, once said, "At times in our life, our inner fire is burnt out, inner fire, courage. It is then fanned into flame by an encounter with another human being. We should all be thankful for those human beings who rekindle our inner fire." You are those human beings that can rekindle that inner fire in somebody who's lost it. I'm one of those human beings. And at any moment, we could be one of those human beings that are on the opposite side of it that need it. But we don't do this alone. So as you march on today, and you continue with the mission, think about that. Where am I supposed to be serving right now? Who is it that's isolating right now? And kick that door down. Start a fire. Winston Churchill once said, "When there is nothing left to burn, then you must set yourself on fire." So thank you for what you're doing for today. And thank you for continuing the march. And thank you for punching a hole into the enemy's ranks. We have to stop this. Thank you. Check. Good. Amazing. Thank you for being here. Before we get too far, I'm going to introduce Patrick Skluzacek, Lonsdale, Minnesota. Let's go up the road. And I'm going to let him introduce our next speaker. Patrick.
Good afternoon. Sergeant First Class Patrick Skluzacek. Sing on. I just want to start out by saying thank you to Hector. That was an awesome speech. I had like 15 different versions of my speech made up, and I forgot every one of them.
You're welcome.
I am just awed at the camaraderie that the armed service has, and how your story and my story are so similar. And everybody's story has probably got the same thing. We all had stress, a lot of stress. I'm choked up. It was overwhelming. I wish I would have been in the other room to come out here and present this. I want to cut this short. You guys got a long road ahead to Waseca. We have a little bit of brightness in our future. I have gotten a Bronze Star. I've been a convoy commander, and I've brought everybody home in my unit alive with all their fingers and toes. But my greatest achievement is my oldest son. created an app that stops night terrors, and I'm wearing one today. I've slept every night since I put it on my wrist. I want to introduce you my son, Tyler.
All right, thanks everybody. Thank you, Dad, for introducing me. And thank you all for your service. I know talk is cheap, and so I decided to actually do something to say thank you. First to what my father did, but it extends to all of you as well. Is it? I've held it really close. Okay. So what I did is I created an application. It's for a smartwatch. It's called My Bibby. And what it does is you wear it on your wrist, and as you sleep, it senses when you're having a night terror, and it steps in to stop it. So if any of you have had a service dog before, or are familiar with the idea of a service dog, it's like a warm body that is essentially trying to take you out of your night terror, but keep you asleep. So you can just pop to the next slide. So I'm going to start off by telling you first a little bit about who I am, why I did this, and how I can hopefully try to help you. And so my name is Tyler, as I said already, and I founded this company. It's a really young company. I founded it 2 months ago, but it's risen so fast because my dad's been wearing this thing, and it's had near miraculous results so far. I go to McAllister College in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm studying a few things. My dad was good at math, so I guess that's hereditary. I used to study economics, but I learned that the whole game of economics is trying to point at problems but having no solution for it. I could say the economy sucks, but what do I do about it? But so then I try to say, like, okay, how can I actually solve a problem? How can I point out a problem and solve it? And the answer for me and for my dad was computer science. And so, like, I was born and raised military household. I'm not in the armed services myself, but I was born in Fort Bragg, lived on the military base in Germany, moved back here. I had to do my morning push-ups just like everyone, so I wasn't a total wimp as a kid. But I've had a pretty deep connection with the Legion and the armed services so far, even outside of my father. The American Legion in Montgomery, Minnesota actually paid for a very large portion of my college education. So they believed in me, and hopefully I can actually return the favor to them like 100-fold if possible. And so you guys, this slide, you know this, it's been said and done. 22 a day, now I heard 23 a day, even more reason we need this. The 3 a.m. club, a lot of you guys are members of 3 a.m. club. I don't have to tell you guys what that is. And a lot of you are having night terrors, or you know someone who's had night terrors, or is having them. And ever since I've started this thing, we got a lot of big press right away, and a lot of people have reached out, mostly from the armed services or from the VA. And I get a lot of emails, and they all have these same words in them. The VA, it's inefficient, they're insincere. I'm really, really tired of taking pills. There needs to be another way to go about doing this. And so I decided, like, my family and I, we don't have a ton of money. We're not super wealthy or anything, but I saw that there was a coding competition out in Washington, D.C. Just 2 months ago, and it was the Hackathon 2015, the Hackathon for Health. And I showed up by myself, which is a little unheard of for competitions like these. The reason I was drawn to this competition and why I saved my pennies for a plane ticket is because my dad, as you guys probably already know, has PTSD, and it really messes with your childhood having a father with PTSD. Let's say 2005, 2006, he went to Iraq. And before that, he was a very happy man, a very active man. He would mow our whole 5 acres of lawn, and then he would go right back. We had to walk behind mower, and then he'd go back and do it the other way, just so it looked fancy like a golf course. Like, there's way too much energy. And so, like, and then he comes back after Iraq, and he's asleep all day. Beer cans start to pile up. He's not the same guy. Something's changed. Something's not right. And so I didn't understand PTSD. I didn't know he wasn't sleeping well because, I mean, I was asleep, so I didn't notice it. And so I showed up at this hackathon with a bunch of bad ideas. Like, I wasn't even thinking about the sleep thing right away. I decided I wanted to make a social network for veterans, and that's a stupid idea. It was a very stupid idea. Super been done and tried before, and there are probably 40 veteran social networks out there that have already failed. And so I decided to throw away the entire idea I came to Hackathon DC with to create something that helps right now, and that was when I created my Bibby. So we came up with this good idea by talking to VA psychiatrists and actual veterans who were at the competition, which kind of goes to show that if you are talking to the people you are actually trying to help, you can actually create a solution to the problem, and that's the biggest thing I've learned so far. And so a little bit about the science behind my Bibby. I'm not a scientist, but there are a lot of scientists helping me with this project. So we have the medical school at the University of Minnesota, the National VA is on board with this. The Mayo Clinic has had people reach out. So if you don't think I'm qualified to do this, there are a whole bunch of people who are qualified to do this that are backing this project as well. And what it does is it uses REM disturbance. So your night terror is happening during your REM cycle. So it's the part of sleep where you're really, really deeply asleep, but your eyes are flickering, you're so deep in thought that your subconscious is taking over your body. And that's when the night terror is happening. So with your night terror, you're essentially having a bad dream, but you're also having the physiological response, and that is what's going to actually wake you up. And so if we can actually, so like I said before, it's similar to the service dog thing, just trying to create a warm body, but you don't have to feed it, and it's a little more reliable because there's science behind it, and that it won't wake you up. It'll keep you asleep. Because as you all know, with PTSD, a lot of what is wrong during the day is based on what happened the night before. So if you're sleeping poorly, your anxiety is worse, your depression is worse, all of your PTSD symptoms and episodes the next day are going to do worse. So this is just trying to make that a little better by making your nights better as well. And so with my Bibby story, I went to Hackathon DC. There were 200 schools there. The biggest schools in the country were there. There was Harvard. I sat right next to the kids from MIT. And while I was talking to veterans, and trying to get like this thing hammered out, seeing if I could actually make a valid product here. The kids from MIT were all right in front of their computers coding, so I'm like, oh crap, I lost this thing, but I'm going to give it a good shot. And so we created something really, really good because we were talking to these veterans, and we actually won the best mobile app for clinicians. So the VA was initially super excited about it, but as you all know with the VA, we've already had some problems there. And so WTOP Radio, it's a Washington, D.C. radio station, interviewed me before I even won. They thought I was coming on with something cool. I had a cool story with my dad, so why not give this kid some media? And that just led to a huge snowball effect of media. We launched a Kickstarter to raise money. I wanted to raise $1,194 so I could get one of every kind of watch, code this for that, and get them on all the app stores as soon as possible. And we raised over $26,000 right away. The people are really super, super on board with this so far. And so we got a lot of media coverage, even the watch company, so I'm raising money to get all these watches, and all of these companies have reached out with huge support. They might have one veteran working there who's spoken up in the company, and I've received free watches in the mail saying, please put my Bibby on these watches and put them onto a veteran's wrist, as soon as possible, and that is what I'm working to do right now. It is too new for this slide, but I also participated in another competition. It's a national app contest called MobCon, or short for Mobile Convention, in which I pitched the app to not even veterans this time, but to investors and financiers, all these big shot Wall Street folks, and they thought this had so much merit that it should go to the next level. So now we are actually a $50,000 company moving at full force to have this thing tested on 2,000 veterans by this January. And so as you can see from the picture, there's some of the press we got. There's me at the lawn and my dad right there at the Lonsdale Memorial, where a whole bunch of our family members are memorialized on plaques there. So this has been a very personal experience, no matter how public it is as well. Yeah, you can go to the next one. And so now I'm going to tell you guys about what this thing does. So a lot of the emails I get, there are two types of people. There's people who are hopeful and people who don't believe me. And looking at the eyes in the room, we're at about half and half right now. Half of you are really excited about this. Half of you say, this thing is stupid. And with my dad here in the room, I'm working to make more and more of you see the hopefulness of this application because it has worked so far. And so coming to the Legion today to speak with you all was a huge step. I've been talking to bigwigs. I've been talking to Wall Street. I've been talking at these big tech conferences. But I didn't dare step foot in an American Legion to tell you guys that this is going to help until I know for sure that it is going to help. So that's why I'm here today. So now I'm going to tell you about how it actually works. And so right here, you have the smartwatch screen on the left. You have the phone screen on the right. For those of you who don't know a whole ton about smartwatches, it's just two entities that are pretty much linked together. Smartwatches aren't that expensive in their cheapest form. A $100 El Cheapo smartwatch should work just the same as the $700 Apple Watch. But, so as far as this goes, is you turn on My Bivvy, you put it on your wrist, you shake your wrist, and it's tracking you. It's tracking you through your whole night's sleep, and it's doing everything you need to do. It's simple, it's that easy to use. Granted, there are still Vietnam vets, Korean vets, even probably a few World War II vets. I'm bad with years and wars, but around. So that 1.5 inch by 1.5 smartwatch screen isn't going to do it for everybody. And so what you can also do is just log on to My Bivvy, hit start, and then go to sleep, and it'll do all of the work for you. Next slide, please. And so you have all of these options, and it's really easy. So it's simple. We're hiding the science. It's accessible by everyone, and it's educational. So not only is this app trying to track everything you're doing and fix your night terror problems, but what it's also going to do is it's trying to teach you what is actually going on while you're asleep. Because My Bivvy, as soon as you turn it off, your sleep isn't going to be as good as it was before. You're going to revert, you're going to go back. And so this gives you something to show, bring it to your VA doctor. Because I've heard a lot of stories where people go to the VA, they have PTSD, including my father, and they say, it's not so bad, take this pill, you're probably sleeping fine, it's probably due to something else. With this, you can actually print out a graph with photo evidence saying, here is exactly why My Bivvy is keeping me asleep. Now we can look at other ways we can get help, such as like going the therapy route or something else, because it gives you just a glimpse of what it's like to have a full night of sleep again and to alleviate some of those depression, anxiety symptoms during the day. So this is my dad's chart. So from this chart, you see a bunch of really low down lines. So like all these lines are pretty steady. Like this is a good night's sleep. These are good night's sleep. This is like okay night's sleep. This is, oh crap, I woke up, I had a night terror. The big orange line. And so what My Bivvy is trying to do is it's trying to make that orange line, or turn that orange line into a purple line or a yellow line. If it's a purple or a yellow line, it means that you're still asleep. So if you flip to the next chart here, this actually shows you what's happening hour per hour. And this is my dad's actual sleep cycle. And this is actually a chart when My Bivvy is working. I might have flipped the order here. But what My Bivvy does is you have this line right here. And it brings you, so he's sleeping, getting to his REM cycle, and this is actually showing that when he's here, this line is representing his night terror line. This is like his night terror line. And up here, like way up off the chart, is your like I'm awake now line. That's where we're trying not to be. We want to stay asleep. But as soon as My Bivvy turns on, you go only slightly above that line, and you go right back to sleep. You stay asleep, and you get a full night's worth of sleep. And so we've had a lot of challenges so far that have kind of like changed how we're trying to get this thing released, and how we're trying to make this big, and how I'm trying to get this onto your wrist or your buddy's wrist as soon as possible. So the government is slow. The VA, I even appeared on their Facebook page. They were really, really excited about it, and I emailed the guy, and he said, I have no idea who to refer you to in order to get this thing big. And so actually, and Minnesota VA actually didn't even reach out to me yet, but I've had a number of state VAs, including North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, California, all reach out saying that they want to help me test this thing on 2,000 people. And so like getting this thing implemented with the VA is going to suck. It's going to be horrible. And so what I'm trying to do is create a second way that you can actually just use My Bivvy, use it right now, and we'll figure out the VA stuff later, but you'll get help in the meantime. The law. For testing on human subjects, there's a lot of hoops we have to jump through, but if we can do it through the VA, it goes a lot faster because they see the need for using this on a veteran to actually help people out. The media is often skewing our message. They try to turn it into a political argument where I'm trying to get the word out and just trying to get help to make this thing big as soon as possible. And if you have a Windows phone or a BlackBerry, it's not going to work. So next time your phone upgrade happens, you might want to consider getting an iPhone or an Android. So you can step to the next one. I just want to tell you that now because I've got a lot of angry emails about Windows phone users. I'm like, I'm sorry, there's like all 6 of you in the world. Okay. I'm sorry, so here's the plan. So right now I'm coding for all types of watches and phones. I won that big national app competition, so I actually have 2 professional companies now working for me to make this thing huge and get it on the app stores. So that January deadline for just getting it out for testing is now looking like a January deadline for getting it onto people's wrists. So you could just pick it up in the App Store or the iPhone store. I wish I could tell you right now that it's already there, but I have to jump through hoops because it is technically a medical device. So if you do want to enter the testing phase, so if you want to be considered as a test subject, just shoot an email to my father or I, or just come up and talk to us after, and we can definitely put you on the list for that. Just to be a test subject, it's the same exact thing. It's just wearing my bivvy, but it makes it a little bit. It'll get it onto your wrist just a little bit faster. So our initial plan was to get it released in May. It snowballed too fast, so that's way too far out, and that's outrageous. But it's exciting. And then in summer of 2016, we're going to release it for everyone else. So vets first, everyone else second. And so I'm excited to try. I'm excited to succeed in helping you or your buddies sleep better at night. And like I said, this is all for my dad, and I'm very thankful that you guys let me come up here to speak today. So thank you. Oh, and I know this is a lot of science, so if anyone has any questions about anything, just feel free. I'll be here. Come ask.
Once again, amazing presentation. Thank you guys for joining us here today. So now you've seen what happens when these combat vets come home, the trauma that happens, the terror that they have to live with, the reality of what they have to live with on a daily basis. And now here you have a solution, another resource. But like I was saying, you can think whatever you want about the administration, the VA, those are only one resource. And now we have another that is a viable resource, and it's happening now. So thank you, for all that you're doing on behalf of all of these folks in the street. Thank you guys so much for what you're doing. This is a very important piece of this whole puzzle. Just two quick announcements. The City of Faribault and the City of Waseca, over the last 2 weeks, when we presented this event to them, the mayors of our respective cities have declared this day, Faribault 23-0 and Waseca 23-0 Recognition Day. So as you're coming out of Faribault, and for those of us that are going on to Waseca, they have stepped up and acknowledged our presence. And like I said, we were trying to raise awareness, and it takes community support and city officials to help with this cause. So we are going to be moving forward very quickly here. We are extremely, we're going to be pushing daylight, obviously. We're going to ruck on. I need everyone who is in this room right now that needs a ride back to Faribault, please stand up. If you need a ride to Faribault, I'm trying to get a good judge of what we need for vehicles here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Looking at 20-ish. Okay, and where are my support drivers? If you guys could sit down. All the support drivers, please stand up. I know there's several in the other room as well. So, okay, so the support drivers, once again, raise your hands if you're driving. Okay, so for those of you that need a ride, take a good look at these individuals. Please approach one of these individuals and make arrangements. They'll get you back to Faribault, okay? And then for the support drivers, if you want to continue on, if you want to return and join us, we're heading straight south. We're going to be heading straight south on 15, straight south in Morristown here. We're going to take the big curve, and then we're going to hit County Road 10 and hit straight south towards Waseca. So if you want to catch up with us after your Faribault drop. When we get to Waseca, there will be buses available to get everyone that needs a ride back to Faribault if you need to. So with that, I thank all of you. God bless you. Thank you. Oh, one quick announcement. One quick announcement.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming to this event. The American Legion here in Morristown, we appreciate having you here. And may we all support this group that we may solve this problem. Other problems that we have come up with in our country, we've all been able to take care of. This one should also be addressed in such a manner. And thank you to the Faribault SAL for contributing the meal here today. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's run. Oh, wait. Barry?
How many meals do we need in Waseca?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Everyone that's going to Waseca, please raise your hand. What are we looking at there, 30-ish, plus a few in the bar? Barry, let's tell them 300. I think 50 to 60 should suffice. So, thank you. Let's throw them up on the street.